Well, thank you very much and very good afternoon. It is an absolute pleasure to be here this afternoon talking about one of the most exciting subjects when it comes to real estate, which is affordable housing. It is no surprise that it is now being called the blue eye of real estate, blue-eyed boy of real estate. It's touted to be a $1 trillion opportunity. 2012, the Ministry of Housing put the demand for affordable housing at about 18 million units in 2012. It's estimated that that demand is not going to ebb, it's only going to continue, and we might actually be looking at a 30 million unit demand or outstanding demand by 2030. So with urbanization obviously happening at a very rapid pace, we're looking at 60% urbanization by 2030. I think this demand is not slowing down, and clearly we're joined by stalwarts who are leading the pack in the development, in the creation, in the delivery and the capitalization of this asset class. So welcome everybody. I'll start right off the bat with you, Vipul. You've seen over a decade of, more than a decade of cycle with multiple asset classes, luxury, township, commercial, and this now seems to be the focal area for most players. What is it that is driving people here, and what makes it so attractive? Because we always thought margins are thin, can't afford cost of capital, there's not enough drivers for developers to jump in. So what is causing people to come to you and look at affordable housing as a segment?
First of all, I think affordable housing is the topic in every conference whenever the market is down. If you take up any conference of 2008, 7-8 period, I think all real estate conferences are all about affordable housing. For some strange reason, the impetus on affordable housing has always been linked to how the market cycle is. But on a serious note, I think it's something which is very much there. It's like saying, is there a market for a 1 lakh rupee car? The issue is not demand side, issue is always supply side. I think the big change has been that this government has been at the front of pushing it across. Contrary to popular perception, I think there is tremendous amount of work which has happened at the ground level. And when I say ground level, I mean beyond the top 10, 20 cities in terms of affordable housing, which is not how capitalists and funds like mine would define it. I'm talking about housing which is below 10 lakh rupees, housing which is below 5 lakh rupees. It is tremendous. And, because we don't get to read all this stuff, and I have not seen anybody having any kind of a fundamental stuff been done on this. What we read is, okay, fine, I was making a 2,000 square feet apartment in Bombay. So instead of 2,000 square feet apartment at 20,000 rupees a square foot, which was 4 crores, he says in this 3-bedroom, the developer calls the designer and architect, he says, make this 2,000 to 1,200 square feet. He keeps the price per square foot the same, and he says, okay, fine, now 1,200 into 20,000, 2.5 crores. So I am making an affordable home, So shrinking the size of the house, keeping the square foot the same, is not, in my opinion, affordable housing, which is how, unfortunately, all of us define it as. Simply, I think it is more about design, it's about efficiency, it's about everything that the industry is not about. And you asked a question about why are builders coming into it. I think, frankly speaking, builders and financiers, they're all coming into it because that's the only thing that is selling.
No, but I'm hearing you say that we're still not getting the concept right. So we're just shrinking ticket sizes. Is that the answer going forward? Is that the sustainable solution? And is that the capital? Is that what capital is willing to support? Or are you actually wanting your partners to innovate, to actually bring down cost, to actually deliver what is required?
Every financer wants their partner to deliver what is required. That's not the issue. I think the issue is, to put it differently, I think the issue is very fundamentally, who is the buyer? The buyer for almost a decade was a person who thought that real estate is a good investment. Today, if you do a dip test in this room, I think 95 out of 100 people say real estate is not a good investment. Because the investor is not bothered about the asset class. He or she is interested in appreciation. The common purview now is real estate, there is so much supply, so much happening, blah, 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 XYZ, everybody has their own sets of reasons. It's not a good investment class. Because the investor is out, everybody is targeting the user. And user is asking all kinds of stupid questions. When will you give possession? What's your credibility? Can I have a house which is 80 lakh rupees in the city of Bombay? And if it is delayed, what is the delayed interest? If it is delayed, then I want to come after you. Now, these are questions that in general the industry is not used to. And that is where I think the industry rather forcefully is getting aligned to. And so are the funds.
So Anand, Puravankara and more specifically Provident has been one of the foremost leaders when it came to thinking about even affordable housing in the country in an organized way. And so what has really changed in the last 2 or 3 years, and what is the sort of hypothesis that you're now working with going forward in terms of focusing on affordable housing as a segment, or is that even a segment that you would like to continue to focus on?
So Amit, in the affordable housing, there are two addressable markets today. Like Vipul said, one is a premium affordable space, and the other one is low-cost housing. Today, as commercial developers, we have still not been able to get our costs down to a particular level which would help us be in the social housing or the low-cost housing space. So it's a choice that we make. I mean, do we need to be in the social housing or do we need to be in the premium affordable housing? The premium or affordable housing space is a very large market. Today we have enough business for the next 10, 15 years. Collectively, all of us keep building that, and still you wouldn't have that addressable market being sufficiently, demand being met. Provident, for example, Provident has grown today to a 2.5 million square foot per year kind of run rate in terms of sales. Our realizations have moved up to 6,000 rupees per square foot, as against 4,500 bucks, say 3-4 years back. So the space that earlier what we all had is affordable housing. Is it a profitable space to be in? All of us knew that there were volumes that were there. Is there sufficient margins that are there to be able to take equity? So debt can always support that kind of thinner margins, but can equity come in so that your equity play can then look at scales being built? That is now established in the premium affordable space. There is sufficient margin for the equity player to take some money. There is sufficient margin for us, and there is still enough liquidity in the space. We are now actively looking at moving what we loosely call as Provident minus. In our drawing board stage. That is a very, very interesting space. That is a space where in the southern market you can look at an 18-20 lakh 2-bedroom. So there a lot of thing goes into design. For example, it's not just about shrinking the apartments. Shrinking the apartments is the visible part of what eventually gets noticed. For example, an average area of a car park in a Puravankara apartment is 400 square foot per car park. The average area of a car park in a Provident housing is 260 square foot. Meaning it is all right in an affordable housing for lesser number of ramps to be there, lesser number of driveways to be there. The driveways need not be double driveways; it can be single driveways. It need not necessarily be under the footprint of the building. It can be an MLCP which could then drive efficiency. These are the innovations that are going in to ensure that we manage costs and still be able to profitable. So there is a very, very exciting space. We still need to do a lot of work on the Provident minus category, and I think that will be a very, very exciting space to be.
Very interesting, Anand. You should mention that 2.5 million square feet is what annually Provident is looking to build in Delaware. That's a very impressive number. Rajesh, moving on to you, we have Vipul say that consumer preferences have changed and it's no more an investment asset class, it's a consumer asset class. Affordable is clearly and squarely targeted at the end customer who's now more demanding. Does that increase cost? What is your experience? What does affordable housing mean today than it was? Earlier, there was no availability. Now maybe there's availability, but consumer preferences have changed. What does it mean in today's context to you?
See, clearly, affordable housing has always been targeted at end consumers. With more supply coming, I think the price should be in check. what I also see is while there is a lot of policy push that's been done on the affordable housing sector, a lot of the push has also been on the demand side, right? Like the 2.5 lakh subsidy, right? Subsidized home loans, and so on and so forth. And I don't think the supply is keeping pace with the demand, especially in this segment. See, economics 101, without increasing supply, if you give 2.5 lakh subsidy to the buyer, property price will go up by 2.5 lakhs. And in a way, I think we are still in that stage where supply is not really caught up. But then, is that demand? As he rightly pointed out, I think there is enough demand for the next few decades. And the question is, how can we supply 5 million units every year at the right price points?
Rohit, moving on to you. I mean, you've very sharply been focusing on affordable in key developing micro markets outside of MMR, outside of Pune, within Pune and Mumbai. Do you think that the current regime offers you a better opportunity to deliver the product that the customer wants, or are you now seeing newer challenges than what you had in the past?
I think the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana scheme has fundamentally transformed the landscape of affordable housing across the country. States that have implemented this along with RERA will see a vast amount of housing units come up in the next few years at very affordable prices. The question is now, what does the customer actually want? So I think the problem of supply will get solved very quickly in the next maybe 12, 24 months. But the question is then, will it all sell, even if it's priced like this? And I don't think it will at all.
Sorry, it won't sell?
I don't think so. So even, for example, we just launched a project in Badlapur, which people financed for us. And we thought we'll sell everything in one day. And out of 1,100 units, we sold only 250 on launch. And many learnings from that as well. We're up to about 400 now in about 7 weeks. So customers clearly want a lifestyle at an affordable price with affordable maintenance on a monthly basis. And by that I mean a school, a hospital, and amenities basically built in. What we did in Badlapur was an extension of an existing project with about 6,000 people already living there. So I mean, it'll obviously sell in the next couple of months. But people who have this impression of you selling millions of units on launch, that's not possible at all. The Mumbai market is a bit different than Bangalore. Bangalore is actually got the IT crowd, which make a combined household income which is much more than what an average person working in the MMR makes here. So we're typically at the 4,000-5,000 rupees a square foot level. So for us, basically, it's all about entry price. So if your land prices are basically low enough, which is at least below 10% of your selling price, then you're sort of insulated from the vagaries of the market. And you can actually, if you're a bit late, like we've been in our approvals, still the land price has been so low that 18%, 20% a year added onto that doesn't really make much difference to your overall viability of the project. So I think that location is very key. We had many conversations in the past about locations as well. I think location is key in the Mumbai market and the Pune market. Mass urban transport is key. Services are very important, and in addition to that, a holistic living.
Rohit, tell me, I mean, we've heard about 18 million units not being delivered yet. We've heard about, everybody's pretty much said that there's insatiable demand. Are we able to keep up the supply side? Rajesh, in fact, even mentioned that because of PMAY and the subsidies, unless we're able to, improve the supply side economics, we will not be able to create affordability. So what is the constraint that you're seeing from the interest to the conversion?
Well, I mean, one has to understand, we're only Mumbai and Pune developers, so I can speak only about these two markets. I have no idea about the rest of India. So for these two markets, the question becomes, where's the bell curve, where's it situated? So if you look at 95% of the population of Mumbai who don't actually have a house, maybe they can afford to buy a house below 10 or 15 lakh rupees. And the question becomes, how do you create supply at that price and yet make money as a developer, close enough to the city where a customer wants to basically go and buy and work and live. So the problem with Mumbai has basically been that the mass urban transport is basically the train service, the western, the central, and the harbour line. And it's always followed a principle of first the abadi has to be living in a particular location, and then infrastructure will catch up with basically demand. It doesn't work like this for affordable housing anywhere on earth. So you have to have infrastructure that basically leads the creation of affordable housing supply as a first point. So if you have an increase in train frequency, for example, beyond Virar to Palghar, or beyond Kalyan to Kasara, or for example beyond Badlapur to Karjat, then you'll have more affordable units come up there because land prices are basically cheaper. So in Mumbai, the challenge has been, let's say we're doing a project in Adgaon. The train frequency is once in 45 minutes. The demand is also limited by the fact that you have a train frequency once in 45 minutes. Whereas Badlapur is not very far away, not that close compared to Adgaon, and we have unlimited demand in Badlapur because there's a metro coming up in Badlapur now also, as you know, in fact right next to our property. So that there's a Vadodara Express.
So what you're saying is that presence of key infrastructure is very critical, and that demand obviously follows where infrastructure is, rather than the reverse way of looking at things. You need to have a established social infrastructure in place, or the transport infrastructure definitely in place for you to develop. And so what you're saying is the cost economics will only work if you have the right land bank, if you are next to a key location, and you cannot go the back of beyond and think of actually creating affordable housing, because that's not going to work irrespective of the price point.
Absolutely.
So just to sort of immediately jump into the issues currently, we've seen that the sector has been constantly asking for SOPs to promote affordable housing, and one of the latest demands, few months back, was the issue of GST. And obviously that sort of shook the whole market for 6 months. There was a lot of flux on how GST would lie, and obviously from 1st of April there was a circular which said you can now build affordable housing at 1% GST. So just to get into you, Anand, do you think that's a positive thing for the market, where everybody think, oh, now instead of 8% GST on affordable, I have to pay 1%, therefore my house is 7% cheaper? Is that a fact, or does the price economic change?
Now, sentiment-wise, I think it's a great positive, because world over, as normal human beings, we all would like to pay lesser tax. Indians are no exception. So when the noticeable number drops, I think it's a positive spin. From the perspective of the customer is more curious to understand, has the home become affordable? The moment he starts conversing with us, it gives us the ability to meet his requirement, But having said that, I think we've gone, possibly it still needs some tweaking with respect to the ITC benefits that have been taken out, So let me just give you an example. $100 is the cost of the product. Earlier I was paying $18 as GST on the $100. I was selling the product at $200. I was charging 12% on $200, which is $24. So $18 was my cost of GST. $24 is I'm collecting from this thing. I used to take a reimbursement of $18 and go and pay the remaining $6 to the government. So that $18 was never considered as a cost. Okay. Now, on the $200, the GST is
were you passing that $6 back to the consumer?
You were never taking it as a cost, number one, right? I mean, so whatever was, so your pricing was just $200, your costing was $100. You're never considering that $18 as a cost. So only if you consider that as a cost, then you'll have to keep this transfer price process, So now what has happened, because your noticeable tax has come down from, let's say, 12% to 1 or 5, the $18 has suddenly become cost because there's nothing to offset it against, So what that would result in is, noticeably, if my margin has to remain the same, assuming that I don't want to take a hit on the margin, then that cost gets passed on to the consumer, I think I think no government has done that. The kind of policy initiatives that has happened in affordable housing in the last 4 or 5 years, I'm sure the government will kind of intervene and see how this needs to be further tweaked. I think overall the cost incidence is going up below that.
If I can just add to that, I think the new policy, again, if you just cut through all the clutter, the property price should increase by 1%. Okay, the
end consumer price
will pay 1% more.
At least 1%. Okay.
Yeah. See, if the simple way of thinking about it is, the average input credit is about 12% on the cost. If your cost base is more than 58%, then the property price should increase by 1%. All right. And so for affordable housing, where the cost base can be 75-80%, it will actually increase the property price. So in our projects, we decided to keep. Right now we have the option. We decided to actually pay 8% GST rather than take the 1% option.
Vipul, do you think that's the right way, that when the markets are looking at taxation as a whole, and obviously it's a very significant part of a purchaser's price, the tax component, the stamp duty, GST, other transaction costs, do you think 1% is actually counterproductive? In your experience in your portfolio companies, are people now forced to increase price and thereby actually bringing down the demand, because people thought, oh, the last time I went, it was 3,200 rupees plus 8%. Now it's going to be 3,200 plus 1%. Do you think that sort of confusion is going to prevent people from coming in because they won't see that 3,200 or whatever list price anymore?
I'll probably just step back 2 questions.
Sure.
I think we are in a world of narratives. Everything is about what is the narrative. So Anand just gave a narrative, he added to that. But frankly, I don't agree. Let me just cut to pre-GST days. In pre-GST, please understand, GST is a value-added tax. Okay? Pre-GST, what was happening? Pre-GST, everybody was paying service tax on the service component, and there was a VAT which was being paid at a local, which was a flat this thing, and there was some set-off which was available for service tax, very minor, but bulk of it was a tax that was paid. That was collected, and there was hardly any set-off which was available. Then came GST. Theoretically, while it has not, I know it has not happened practically, theoretically, if my cost of construction was 2,000 rupees, okay, in the pre-GST days, post-GST, the logic of me getting a set-off is that my cost will not be 2,000 rupees because there is a value-added tax, and my cost will actually be 1,900 or 1,800, whatever the number is. The set-off logic is that whatever I'm collecting, I'm getting a set-off because my cost is lower. Now the general complaint is that, the cement guy and the steel guy and the aluminum guy and blah, blah, blah has not probably given me the benefit. So, say the developer community in general, and I'm not saying everybody, but in general has said that, listen, it's a tax. So like Anand mentioned, so there is 18% which is being paid. I'm getting 12% instead of 12, I'm now getting 1. So I am losing money. But it is not true because technically my cost has gone down. What should have happened is that the price, assuming the margin is the same, and margin should be the same, my price also should have gone down. But the market is so volatile and the market is bad over the last couple of years. So all those things got absorbed in the discounts that were given. Long story short, the narrative is that I was collecting 12% and getting a set-off. But that 12% and set-off was on X price. And 1% and set-off is on X minus price or cost, which is something which the industry obviously understands. If you go through any balance sheet of any cost sheet of any project, that is true. Because if I was getting steel at 100 rupees earlier per unit, I would obviously in a post-GST scenario get it less than 100 rupees. I can't get it for 100 rupees. It has to be lower. Now, whether I'm not able to push it through to the steel manufacturer is not, at the end of the day, GST is concerned. It will obviously get implemented. But what people have done is that they have kind of pocketed that gap and blaming the ecosystem, which I don't agree with, number one. Number two, he talked about what is going to happen, Rohit. I think the primary factor is that there is a greed factor.
Sometimes it's difficult to disagree with bankers, So.
On this forum you can, Anand. So please feel free to voice your concern.
But it's we are financiers to these projects, and we are as much guilty as probably most of them because we are aligned to that extent. And I can see it in our projects. I know a lot of projects where our cost has gone down and we have kept the price same. It is not because of anything else, but because of greed. Now, if market has gone down, that has nothing to do with the cost structure and tax structure. If my price has to go down because that happens in any industry, if price has to go down because market has gone down, you cannot blame GST for it. That's, in my opinion, a wrong way of putting it. That's one. Second, you talked about increase in price. Increase in price has to happen because perceptibly the narrative is very simple. 12%, 1%. So I have to maintain my margin. I have to increase the price. I think the issue is not whether I can increase the price or not, or should I increase the price or not. Issue is, can I increase the price or not? Right. Today, he can increase the price because he's in the top 1% of developers of his zone. Because clearly the customer preferences are saying, he's asking the same question. Will you give me my possession in time? Will you deliver the 2.5 million? Will you do that kind of stuff? He can afford to increase it. I can assure you 90% of his peers in his zone can't. In fact, forget increasing by 1%, they have to reduce by 10% if they have to sell. So whether I'm making on paper, yes, to maintain my margin, I have to increase by 1% and all those things. But you have to understand the market reality. The reality is it's not selling. If 100 units are selling today, 70 are selling.
fair point.
No, all good. Look, I was just giving you a mathematical answer, right? Regardless of where you can get price. I mean, I take all your points on board. I'm saying compared to the earlier regime of 8% GST versus the new thing which says affordable housing can get away with 1%, mathematically, I'm saying it should result in 1%.
No, we get it, Rajesh. I mean, so, the point still being that, policy initiatives are obviously gearing itself to be more customer friendly. I think the point people is trying to say is that it's a pass-through tax. The benefit should flow to the consumer. The government is willing to sort of do things
one
around
quick
it.
question on just one quick view on GST. I think in the very medium term, having no reconciliation mechanism is actually a very good thing. 1% basically means now there's no reconciliation anymore. No one's looking into your books.
That's right.
It's very simple, very transparent. I think it's a very good thing for the medium to long term.
No, I'm sure you've actually given an undertaking to the government before they announced it, Rohit. So you signed the petition.
No, it's very good because, his books now don't need to be opened by every
That's
inspector.
Right. That's right.
See, the key thing is to lessen the problems is that there should be no powers with everybody in the ecosystem.
That's right.
Now in this new ecosystem, otherwise anybody can use that anti-profiteering thing and walk into your office and ask questions. Today, I'm paying this tax, this is what it is. Now, how I work my numbers is my play, but life is simple.
So, Rajesh, I'll come back to you now on another interesting point. We talked about the demand economics, and I don't think there's any dispute in terms of the total outstanding demand, which is why, Anand is building what he's building, Rohit is building what he's building, and millions of square feet under development. And by the way, I think selling 400-500, units out of 1,200 in a few weeks is not bad, Rohit. So, I don't know why you're disappointed.
No, but you should know the reason he has not sold 1,200 and we have financed that project is because of greed again. Because he wanted to do marginal pricing. He wanted to do marginal pricing. You can't go and sell 1,200 units, you want to do marginal pricing. Rohit, if you reduce the price, you can always probably sit on the conference and say, we have sold it in one day.
There's no chance of reducing pricing.
Okay, fair enough. So I think we'll jump into the next question, which is very important. Is, finally we're looking at a very capital-intensive sector. And to sustain this development, and I think there was one KPMG famous report about 2 years back where it was touted that it's $1 trillion product or $1 trillion opportunity. Clearly, we don't have $1 trillion. I mean, we don't maybe even have $1 billion for all we know. So, Rajesh, do you think capital, especially post-ILFS, we've been hearing every single newspaper, every single economist, every single news channel talk about one single topic. Where is the capital? When will NBFCs be capitalized? When will the money bags start opening up and writing checks? Do you think, apart from all of these narratives of demand, supply, price, cost, the ability to produce because of lack of capital and the cost of capital could be the actual bottleneck?
Absolutely. I mean, by the way, Vipul is clearly the guru here on capital, but I'll just give you my perspective for what it is worth. Look, especially when we're thinking about housing in the 10 lakh to 30 lakh kind of segment, it is an SME challenge. All right, let's take about a decent project. Let's say 1 acre project, 100 units. If the unit size is 10 lakhs, right, price is 10 lakhs, then you're talking about a top line of 10 crores. That project needs a couple of crores of working capital, right? So it's basically an SME problem. Question is, who out there is set up to write 2 crore, 5 crore, 10 crore checks in scale? Right, this is needed across 10,000 developers in the country. Turns out nobody. Why? Banks are not there in this space at all. All right, and we don't have private equity shops going around writing 5 crore rupee checks. So I'm saying we have an SME problem in hand, and that is bulk of the affordable housing
that
supply
may be
in this
more
country.
On the rural side than in the urban side, I'm assuming. Because urban developments are still far
Again,
bigger. And
barring a few marquee projects like, Purvankara and Podar, I'm saying bulk of the developments are sub 5 acres. And even if you say 5 acres, you're talking 50 crore top line. That project needs 5-10 crore rupee working capital, right? I'm telling you, today we have a structural problem. If you want housing for all, we need to be able to deliver capital to those small developers across the country, producing affordable homes at 10, 20, 30 lakh price points. And that can be done with technology. I'm saying today nobody's doing it. It's a fintech opportunity, right? To be able to deliver 5 crore rupee checks to 10,000 developers across the country to catalyze affordable housing development. So we have a two-pronged problem. One, we need $10, $20 billion every year, which doesn't exist. And even if you find the money, we need to figure out how to distribute this across 10,000 developers. That machinery doesn't exist.
You've been talking about it being a priority sector lending for quite some time. And
that is the simplest solution. If you want to solve this problem, get banks to wake up and start lending to this sector. And you can do that by calling it priority sector.
Anand, do you agree? Do you think capital is a constraint?
I think if your business model anticipates requirement of capital for construction, then there's a problem in affordable housing. Okay, you need capital to purchase land. Okay, now whether does it need to be funded by equity or does it need to be funded by debt, and hence opening up debt financing for land, that's a different conversation altogether. If you're looking at affordable housing, if you're saying that the demand pie is so large, you should be able to finance your operations from consumer cash flows. If he's able to sell 300, 400 units in one day, why would you need construction finance? If you manage it well, construction finance eats into your margin, it pushes your prices up. So your go-to-market strategy needs to be in such a way that it should assume that I do not require construction finance. Okay, I think if you do that well, if you go to market and hence your pricing strategy, hence your ticket sizes, and how you phase your inventory out. For example, don't release speculative inventory. Release inventory to meet your demand. So if you're releasing 300 units to support 250 sales, then you're fine with it. If you're releasing 450 units to support 250 sales, then you have a problem. Then you need to do that gap funding. As long as you do this well, supported by data, I don't think you need construction finance. So hence, to me, debt is not a great botheration in construction finance. What you need is your ability to do more projects. Okay, hence you need capital at the purchase level, and there's a little bit of startup capital that you need. For a typical 7,000 rupee product, you need about non-Bombay. I'm talking about. You need about 300 to 400 bucks of startup capital. In terms of deposits, in terms of sanction money, in terms of pre-launch money. This is the money that you need. If this is available in a cheap, sustainable fashion, I think this scale can be built.
You were saying?
I think it's the scale of the issue that Rajesh was talking about. So you can have a hub model and a spoke model. Okay, Puravankara and Asa hub models. We're operating in tier 1 cities, right? You can call Pune tier 1 city. Rajesh is talking about a structural issue, which is a housing for all issue. So if you want to create the shortfall to be met by 2022, it won't be met by the likes of Puravankara and Podar, because we cannot produce. He's doing 2.5 million square feet a year. He can't make 50 million square feet a day, right? So Rajesh is addressing the issue of how does one create capacity where you need 1,000 Puravankara and Podars, right? Which don't exist today. So he's saying, don't focus only on the tier 1, tier 2 developers. Go downstream and have small developers who are in the SME sector create supply. Okay, now in whatever space, in whatever size of projects they can actually afford. I may have a different view that no, they need amenities, they need school, they need hospital. It's a different model of development. But my model doesn't bridge the gap of supply by 2022. Rajesh's model, if it's done properly, meets that, can help bridge that gap. No,
fair enough. So, just a very, very quick go around the table question. What are your top 3 things in terms of ask for affordable housing to be what it should be from your perspective over the next 5 years? What are the top 3 things you would want to happen? Could be anything, whether, what you would do, what the government could do, or anybody else could do.
So we got slammed because we got stuck in regulation, right? And regulations come, we're now 3 million square feet, we're now 3 crore square feet backed up. So I have a problem for sales, right? So that's a different issue. But the biggest issue has been single window clearance, okay, which is still very far away. You have to know the system very well. In Mumbai to get your clearances done well, and luckily we managed to understand the system now. So I think for the overall industry perspective, single window clearance. Second, what comes first, the horse or the carriage? In my opinion, infrastructure always comes first. So focus on infrastructure, and that means creating water, electricity, STPs, roads, and so on and so forth, and creating zones. So if you have a master planning point, which is like a Le Corbusier master planning point of view, it's a disaster because Mohali is done very well, but Chandigarh is like a dead city, like no one lives there, right? Who lives there? It's like a boring city. Pardon to anybody who lives in Chandigarh, but you know what I mean, like Navi Mumbai versus it's not a buzzing place, right? So now you have complex adaptive systems as the way of basically master planning for the future. So for that you have to create organic growth in a CBD or in whatever you want to plan it. So if the government basically makes zones for affordable housing and inculcates a walk to work concept with school, university, commercial, industrial, residential, it makes it a more sustainable, holistic development sort of perspective. That's point number 3. Point number 4, capital is of course required. And the question becomes, what's the cost of capital that can sustain a long-term project? And is that 10%, is that 18%? That's a matter of demand and supply as well. And last, I think, is the mindset of the developer, right? So let's say the HDFC had a conference on Friday. I was lucky enough to be invited to it. Now funds are partnering with developers to have knowledge sharing, right? So let's say both are sucks at ERP, the statement of fact, right? So we'll ask HDFC, we want to improve our CRM, we want to improve our ERP. What do we do? Okay, they'll have a developer, for example, in XYZ location, for example, a person in Gurgaon. He says, okay, I'm happy with this ERP system. Let me give you a helping hand in your ERP. So that capacity building of your back end that really allows you to have explosive growth, which is systems and technology driven, that mindset has to be brought into a developer. But the mindset in Bombay was, how do I exploit my FSI? How do I get more FSI which another person can't get? How do I sully demand so that I can get, how do I sully supply so I can get 20%?
Fair enough. So you're saying basically the capability of the developer, a single window clearance and infrastructure. Rajesh?
No, very well said. I agree with everything he said. But if my top 3 picks would be 1, classify affordable housing project finance as PSL. If you do that, this single thing can create 1 million homes every year in the country. Okay? Hold me responsible for this if at all it becomes PSL. Second, single window clearance. It's an obvious one. 3, make more lands available for affordable housing. Right? We need 50,000 acres of land every year if you want to do 5 million homes every year. And so I guess we can take Rajasthan as a case in point. Where
that's a great example, yeah.
Allowed green zone lands, non-development zone lands to be made available for affordable housing development. I think the rest of the country should follow that example.
Anand?
I think cheaper long-term, long-ended funds for land, that is one piece, whether it's by categorizing land purchase for affordable housing as PSL, whatever that works, We've also had a flurry of policy interventions in the last 3-4 years, many of them extremely conducive for affordable housing. But I think we need a stable period right now, not too many changes, it needs time for things to sink in, it needs time for us to reflect that onto costing and pricing. I think a stable period is something that would be essential. I think if these 2 things are taken care of, I think it should be fine.
Vipul?
I think most of the points have been covered. Just one more point. In fact, we are working on that, where we are saying that let there be special affordable housing zones, which like they had the SEZs for manufacturing. We are already working with 4 state governments, and also a little bit on the central government stuff has started, where you're saying we'll identify. See, ultimately the game is about doing 2 things right, instead of talking 500 things. So we are saying let's pick up 5 zones, 5 exact land parcels, which we have kind of identified, and call them special affordable housing zones, get the infrastructure. Once the infrastructure is there, the banks, the right cost of money, the ecosystem of financing will come. If these things happen, there is no reason why it will not fly.
So I would, I think very, very good points, and I would think technology, I think it's been understated, but I think clearly, and I think supplemented to some extent by what already also Rohit said, is the ability of the producers to absorb technology, to absorb efficiencies, to absorb methodologies that they can continue to drive down their operating costs, building operational efficiencies. I think that's clearly a factor. Okay, thank you very much, guys. Thank you for being here.